I'm going to get on with some of these other cultural organizations. The Birchfield Penny, of course, prestigious organization. I was wondering about their West Seneca building that has to be replaced. Do you think that maybe they should have approached it like the Albright Knox did and just bring an artist in to build a new place for, the Birchfield Penny out there in West Seneca? Do you have any thoughts on that, Richard?
I saw something about that on the news, that there was a problem with the building that they bought, right? Mm-hmm. And they had to do something about it.
Something inferior, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know the details behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you can illuminate us.
That I'm not sure either. I just know that from what I heard, it was just inferior materials when they built it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And it couldn't be renovated. So I was just thinking that maybe come in and start all anew and bring somebody of renown, into the picture, like the Albright Knox did for a whole wing, of their art museum.
Do you find the Albright Knox to be challenging and invigorating when you go there?
I like the Albright Knox, but I also think that Music is Art probably should have stayed there. That's the way I feel about that. I wanted to ask you, though, what did you think about Music is Art's move from the Albright Knox to Riverworks? Do you think that's a good thing on the whole, or were you maybe perhaps disappointed that it left the Albright Knox?
Well, I don't go to the Music is Art, so maybe I shouldn't say.
Oh, okay. All right.
Now, you've actually gone to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You've been to it when it was at the Albright. You've been to it when it was at Riverworks, and you preferred the Albright, right?
Maybe I just like the artsy kind of feel to the Albright Knox Art Gallery.
Uh-huh.
That's probably what it is.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever had any difficult times here that you can remember, Richard, at the House of the Future? Have there ever been any difficult or hard moments that you've had to face here?
There have been stressful moments in this very room.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell you one of them if you want to hear it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a Greg Sterle show, and Greg was asked, do you want to come down to Channel 7 and make a cameo appearance on Offbeat Cinema? And Greg said, yeah, I would love to. So he asks Paula to come with him, and he asks...
That's his wife.
His wife, and he asked another person who was here at the time, who is... he's very starstruck over the whole Channel 7 thing. Like, he thinks, his name is Sal. Sal thinks, one of these days I'm going to be a great celebrity, and I belong at Channel 7. And he was an intern there, and he felt like, this is me. I know I'm going to be great.
He has aspirations.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. So he said, Sal, do you want to come with us? And Sal says, okay. So they all go down to Channel 7, and I didn't want to go because if he brought too many people, it would look kind of like, how many people are you bringing? It turned out that when he got there, they said, you brought more people than we even thought you would bring. So we'll have you on the air, and we'll have Paula on the air.
Oh.
But not Sal.
Oh, no. Oh.
So the guy who it really meant a lot to, he didn't get to go on the air, all right?
Oh, yeah.
So what he did is he was talking to the people on the set. And afterwards, he mentioned to Greg that the people at Channel 7 were very dissatisfied with the interview because they expected Paula to say more. And Greg heard this is before he married Paula, but he liked her.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt, that doesn't make sense. Like, they didn't act that way around me. Why would they tell him and not me? I didn't pick up on this vibe at all. So he contacted all the people at Channel 7. He said, we never said anything like that. What are you talking about? So at this point now, Paula is developing a dislike of Sal for fabricating this story. All right. Now comes the blowing up of the volcano. Okay. Sal made a movie on his own with his little video camera. He made his own little home movie. And he was going to have the grand opening premiere here at the Home of the Future. So people came, we all filled up in this room, and we watched it, and then after it was over, everybody applauded, you know what I mean? And we asked him to get up for a question and answer session. So he got up ahead of the question and answer session, talk about putting gasoline on a fire. And he said, before I take the question and answer session, I would like to thank all the people that made this movie possible. I want to thank Richard. He gave me a lot of help with the technical side of things. I want to thank Greg. Greg, he helped me with the directorial side of things. I would like to thank you all. And Greg said, well, aren't you going to thank Paula? And he goes, yes, even Paula helped out. like he was saying, can you believe it? Even she helped out? Paula blew up. It was so much tension in this room, Jim. It was like nothing you'd ever. It's like Paula was, you know, like when the flash turns into a flame.
You could cut it with a knife.
She turned into a flame. And Greg had to follow her outside. I thought she was going to have a stroke. She was so upset. He followed her outside to calm her down.
Mm-hmm.
All right, which he succeeded in doing.
Uh-huh.
But that was one of the most tense, stressful moments that this room has ever seen.
Hey, thanks for sharing that with us. I'm sure that was kind of exciting, a little more exciting than you were hoping for. You were talking about Paula. Paula once mentioned to me that your 1995 retrospective was fascinating. And can you tell us a little about that? The 1995 retrospective.
That was when UB contacted me and said, would you like to program your videos for a night? They have a special screening room at UB, you know.
Oh, okay.
So I said, all right, I'll do a retrospective of all my work up to that point. So I went there, and before we went there, we had a meal at a restaurant near UB.
Mm-hmm.
And at that meal, Greg met Paula.
Oh, okay. How do you like that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. You've had some shows yourself. I was going to ask, how do you start a TV show? You know, do you try to make it a variety show? Or I know that in the early years you had a program called Snap Judgements on public access. And what was that about?
I was close friends with my friend Ron, and we like to go to different restaurants and have meals together. Mm-hmm. Usually we would go to a restaurant, have a meal, and at the meal we would decide if we were going to go see a movie. So we would buy a newspaper, we'd be sitting at the restaurant waiting for our food or eating our food, and I'd be going through all the different movies that were up. Now, most of the time, I would just mention the movie, and neither of us knew what it was about. So we had to decide if we would like the movie just based on the title.
Were you guys being honest?
Yeah, you know, like... It might say the title of the movie and the actors, and that's it. We had to go on.
That's
so
pretty good.
As we were discussing whether or not we liked this movie, I got the idea that I would turn to an imaginary camera and I would talk to an imaginary audience and explain to them what was going on. And then Ron started doing the same thing.
Were you convincing? You know, that you were actually talking to somebody out in TV land?
It was like a rhetorical device, okay? And then what happened is an opening popped up. There was an open slot for a TV show. And I said, Ron, why don't we do our thing at restaurants and turn it into a TV show? I'll bring a camera. And he says, you would bring a camera into the restaurant? I go, yeah, I can bring a camera, and we'll attach it to the chair. And next the empty chair, and then you and I will talk, and we'll be looking at instead of an imaginary camera, we'll look at the real camera. We did that for 100 episodes.
How many years was that?
That had to be at least 3 or 4 years.
That's a long-running series.
It is. It is. It's quite memorable and enjoyable.
You had another program, I believe, HOTF-TV show? HOTF-TV show?
Yeah. Home of the Future.
Yeah.
TV show.
Was that the Greg Sterle show that you mentioned before, or was that something different?
No, he got his own slot.
Mm-hmm.
Greg had his own slot, and I had my own slot.
Oh, so the HOTF-TV show was
different from the Greg Sterle show.
What was that about?
HOTF-TV?
Yeah.
That was basically having...
was this after the show you just described?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
This could be anything. This was all... Because so many people go through my life, I would just say to people, why don't you show up this Saturday and you can host your own TV show? And it'll be part of the HOTF-TV show.
Oh, you had guest hosts?
Constantly.
Ah, okay.
Constantly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. On Saturday nights?
Either Friday or Saturday. I can't remember what day we shot it on.
Those are considered the best nights, I guess, for patronage, to get people to come on the weekends, I would suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We mentioned Think Twice radio before.
Yeah, 2006.
And are there any qualifications for people that want to start a show? I mean, how do you know that they're going to stick with it?
You don't. And there's people who I thought for sure would stick with it and didn't. And there's people who I thought, you're not going to stick with it, and they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you really can't tell.
Oh, okay. Give them a chance, though. See what they can do.
However, someone did once ask me if they could have a show based on astrology.
Uh-huh.
I said no. And the second time someone said, you know, there's black entertainment television. I'm thinking about having a radio show called White People's Radio. I said, no, you can't have a show called White People's Radio.
Oh, my God. Back in the day, and this is before the internet, you were the show.
Yeah.
I mean, for creative types, musicians, anybody who wanted their creativity broadcast would come to you.
Yeah.
With the public access.
Right.
Because that was access right there.
Right.
Do you find that after the internet began that you didn't have as much participation with the public approaching you? You know, for projects and shows and being on shows and with public access activity?
Well, once the internet began, I started using the internet as an outlet. That's why Think Twice Radio got started, because I realized you could have a radio station on the internet for a very small amount of money.
Ah, okay. Huh.
So life gave me lemons and I made lemonade.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody we all know, Tony Conrad, passed away recently.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Mr. Conrad?
Oh, definitely. He came, I called him up at one point, and I said something to him that I say to a lot of people. You know, you're not going to be around forever. How would you like to sit down with me and we'll do an interview about you where we go in depth as to your life experiences? And he said, okay. So he came over, and the first thing he said to me when he sat down and I was setting up the camera, he said, why did you ask me? And I said, well, I just thought you're interesting, and I've been asking a lot of people. And he said, oh, because I thought it was something else. I said, what could it be? He says, you promise you won't tell anybody? Sure. He said, I have cancer.
Oh.
And he says, I don't know how much longer I'll be around.
Oh, geez.
So he said, I'll tell you what, he said to me, let's do these interviews, but then release them after he passes away.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and people have really, really thanked me for doing those interviews.
Yeah, that kind of similar to Don Rickles. He did those dinner interviews right before he passed away.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have you seen them?
No, I've heard about them, though.
Mm.
I mean to watch them. Yeah, I haven't gotten to watching them yet.
And what it did is it reminded me of the fact that mortality is very real. And so if you were to have some catastrophic thing happen to you, or if I was to have something happen to me, people would remember us from our video interviews.
Yes, yes, definitely. I know that you like taking pictures.
I do.
And when you go out and about to parties or get-togethers, official birthday parties, things of that nature, you like to take pictures with your camera.
Right.
And is there anything that influenced you that made you interested in taking pictures? Yeah, because I always see you at events, important engagements, occasions, taking pictures. I'm sure the people that are getting pictures taken of them enjoy it later on. But was there anything that started you taking pictures? And how long have you been at it?
I got my first camera at age 18.
Okay.
And I immediately started working on an artistic series, which I still have.
Mm-hmm.
I still have.
Oh.
And in this series, I was trying to overcome the limitations of photography, which is something I've always tried to do, is overcome the limitations. So, for example, if I take a picture of you, that's one thing. But if I say, what's going on in your life, Jim? And you say, oh, my upstairs neighbors are constantly having fights and I'm having trouble sleeping. And I say, let's write that down on a piece of paper.
Yes, yes.
And now I take a picture of you holding this thing, man who is kept up at night by his neighbors arguing. It changes the photo.
Uh-huh.
See? It changes the photo. So we've gone beyond the limitations of the picture.
Yes. You are a compiler. You compiled your favorite music songs also.
Correct.
Yeah. You don't seem to let them go.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. You know what you like.
I do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I also wanted to ask you, Richard, do you have a favorite performance venue? Like there's the Ninth Ward, Babeville, Birchfield Penny Arts Center, Albright Knox Art Gallery, Market Arcade, Squeaky Wheel, Hall Walls, Alt Theater. Do any of those or maybe some other performance venue come to mind that you like the most, that you appreciated maybe a performance there, or you just like going there, you look forward to going there? Anything along those lines as far as, and this doesn't count, the House of the Future.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. I cannot think of a favorite that would rise in the ranks above every other one.
Okay. All right.
By the way, a lot of people on TV ask for ranking too. So you're in their company.
Okay.
You know, Paul McCartney, you've written a lot of songs. What's your favorite song? You know, I mean.
Immediately, Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney comes to mind.
and I wonder if you could rephrase the question like, you've written a lot of songs. Just pick a song at random and tell us about it, how that would go over.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to know, do you ever go to other cities, like Toronto or New York City or Cleveland, for inspiration or just new creative ideas, or is any?
No, I'm not a traveler.
At all?
I am not.
Oh, okay.
Traveler of the internal landscape.
Uh-huh. All right. Yeah.
And I discover that not many people are travelers of the internal landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell when I write to them. Like they want to discuss like the surface of things, and I want to discuss the depth of things.
Okay.
Such as, for example, take my friend Jackie, okay? It was a really interesting year. My daughter so-and-so was in the school play. My son, he won his little leagues team, won the championship. I had a wonderful 20th wedding anniversary with my husband. We went to this restaurant. We did A, B, and C. And I write back and I say, okay. I'm having
an experience?
No, I would say something like, Schopenhauer. He said that when I look at another person, I realize that they have a whole subjective life, and I can never know what that's like. I don't know what it's like for you when you look at the color red. I just know what it's like for me. I don't know what it's like for you when you hear a Beethoven symphony. I just know what it's like for me. So you got a subjective side that I'm sealed off from. Schopenhauer said, what if that's true for everything? So what if this rock has a subjective side, but we can't see it? We don't know what this rock feels, what it likes, any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I write to them and I say that that when we look at the world, it's like we're looking at a mask, and we can't see what is behind the mask. But nevertheless, there are those of us that always want to see behind the mask.
Yes.
And
yes.
I would say to her, are you a person who enjoys the mask, or do you want to see what is behind it? Silence. No response.
Something similar to that is a new program, Stranger Things. They never quite get to the danger, but there's always people that want to know what it is. And
I hear that's growing in popularity.
Yes, yeah.
Are you a fan?
Not yet. Not yet. Yeah. It's kind of like X-Files. You know, they're always in the midst of straining to get the answer, but they never quite get there.
Oh.
I don't know. I need completion.
Mm.
You know, we were on a space celestial jag before.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out that in the recent Time magazine,
Yeah.
November-December Time magazine,
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about 25 best inventions of 2017. One of them is the InSight lander that they're sending to Mars next year to study the planet's composition. Study polled, or a poll showed that most people want to help the Earth directly, and they want space travel to help the Earth directly, and any other thing is not important. What do you think about that? You know, as far as space travel is concerned.
Not a good idea. I mean, let's put it this way. It's a good idea, but I don't think that the Earth can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
There's more important things to spend the money on.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Do you believe in ghosts, Richard? There was a recent article just in this last weekend, Sunday's Buffalo News, about Galveston, Texas being saturated by ghosts. Do you believe in ghosts?
Good question. All right. We know that there is such a thing called the natural world, and the natural world has rules and laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have a word for the natural world, and we call it reality. Okay? So if you step off of a cliff, reality will inform you that you're going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Now, a lot of people don't like the fact that they live confined to the rules of reality. So what they do is they use their imagination. And in their imagination, they say, no, there's a second reality. And in the second reality, if you step off a cliff, you fly. You don't have to worry about falling. And they think up all these imaginary rules in the second reality. Well, that's what ghosts are part of, the second reality. And I'm happy with living in just one reality. And to quote William Butler Yeats about living in reality, he said this. He said, there are magical and mysterious things in the world just waiting for our senses to become sharp enough to notice them. Now, like you said earlier, Jim, if you're eating a lot of junk foods, you're not exercising, your senses become dull.
Sure.
You don't notice the magical and wonderful things, so you start imagining that there are such things. But if you follow a path where you keep sharpening your senses, you're going to notice them. You're going to not have any need for a second reality.
Well put. Okay. And you mentioned like flying, and I got to ask this. If you could be a superhero, who would you be, or what superpower would you want to possess? Would it be flying, or would it be something else?
Understanding. I'd like to have the power of understanding.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I have a theory that the antidote to fear is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, once you understand something, you have no reason to fear it.
You're talking about unity and understanding.
No, I'm talking about this, for example. My friend, she always feels, whenever she gets her menstrual cycle, it affects her physical body and it affects her moods, and it's just a horrible time of the month for her.
Uh-huh.
So what she started doing is she started recording when the menstrual cycle would hit, and now 2 days before her phone goes off with an alarm, and it says, "You'll be getting it in 2 days. So pay attention to what's going on." Now she's approaching it with understanding. Now she knows, oh, now I know why I feel the way I do, because it's coming on. So in other words, she took something that she had would sneak up on her and make her feel horrible, but now she has understanding. So now she can handle it better.
I see.
You could be afraid of lightning, and you could think it's it's the gods that are angry at you, and that you should do something to placate the gods, or you could find out what it's really about. And then you see, I don't have to do any of that stuff.
You're talking about understanding. What is your take? The image of your studio here that exists to others. What do others think of your place?
Well,
that you think. What do you think they think of this place?
Well, they say to me, "Oh, you live in the home of the future." They say, "I live in the home of the past." People say that because they don't understand what the word means.
Mm-hmm.
So I explain to them, well, the future has two different meanings. So the first meaning, you could call it like the astrological meaning. The future is something out there that's going to happen to you. All right? A lot of people look at the future like that. What does the future hold for me, they say. In other words, what's out there that's going to happen to me? But there's a second definition, and that is, what am I going to do right now that is going to determine what tomorrow is going to be like? That's different.
Mm-hmm.
In that view of the future, you're in charge.
Yes.
That is what the home of the future is.
You're making a plan.
Yeah. What we're doing now is going to affect what we're going to experience tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Can I ask you some personal questions?
You can.
Okay. Who or what has been the biggest influence on your life?
I could just tell you some of the influences.
Okay.
All right.
Briefly?
I couldn't rank them. I could just tell you what some of them were.
Mm-hmm.
A fellow named Dave Medium had a big influence on me. He was this creative person who came here for like a whole decade before his mental health deteriorated to the point where he just lost his mind, really. I saw him at a restaurant about 10 years ago, and he didn't even know who I was. But he was on fire with creativity. I mean, he was just a font. He showed me a lot about what creativity can do. Working with Greg Sterlace has been a huge influence. Ron Emke was a huge influence. All these people influenced me as far as their creative fire.
Mm-hmm. Well, who has been the kindest to you in your life?
That's a tough
The nicest
question.
and kindest person.
That is a tough question. I'd have to give that some thought.
Okay. Or if you could hold on to one memory from your life forever, what would that be? This is kind of like an afterlife question.
Oh, well, I'm already doing that. I'm already holding on to memories. And I would like to point something out, too. If something happened 20 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every 2 years I remember it, each time I remember it, do you know what I'm remembering? I'm not remembering the event from 20 years ago. I'm remembering how I told it 2 years ago.
Oh. And thank you very much, Richard, because our time is done.
Okay, you want to say goodbye to the people?
Oh, I think you should.
Okay. Goodbye, people. Thank you for watching this interview by Jim McLaughlin.